Dave Zimmerman here, chop wood, carry water. I wanted to run through a set of very simple Pilates exercises today. A lot of these are even kind of considered Pilates warm-ups. And the reason I wanted to start here, for those of you who've worked with me before, you hopefully understand or have seen my emphasis on kind of the fundamentals. And we've probably talked ad nauseum about why that's important. For those of you who have not, there are 6 principles that Joseph Pilates actually put forward for all of this stuff. Breathing, flow, centering, concentration, control, and precision. And I want to use an analogy, I think, to help you understand this and why these things are important. Our nervous system, this isn't the analogy yet, our nervous system basically works kind of by habit. We sort of grease, so to speak, these neural pathways that we use. And so those can be good habits, bad habits, what have you. Most of us have picked up some habits. I'm a shoulder shrugger, for example. If you tell me something's going to be really hard, you can almost see me start to tense my shoulders up already as I prepare to do it. Generally, that does not help me with whatever the upcoming task is. So when we follow these Pilates principles, the idea is we have an opportunity to create some new neural pathways. The more often we use those pathways, the more those pathways are going to get reinforced. The more often I'm shrugging my shoulders, the more likely I am going to be to do that in the future. So the analogy is this. Imagine when you're doing these exercises, imagine how it would be if you were sewing a shirt. Let's say you were hand sewing a shirt. You're going to make yourself a shirt. And so you're obviously doing some stitching. And if you're paying attention to exactly what you're doing and you're following a pattern, or you're being precise, you're in control, you're flowing, you're centering, you're breathing, you're concentrating, you're going to end up with a garment hopefully that's going to fit, that you can wear around. And that's what we're doing with our bodies when we do these Pilates exercises. So now imagine sewing that same shirt where you're not doing those things. You're not concentrating, you're not focusing, you're not precise about your stitches, you're not really following the pattern, and you end up, you may end up with a shirt that, has a sleeve here and a sleeve that isn't even in the right spot, that's hanging, off of where your back would be. It's going to be a very uncomfortable shirt to wear. And that's what we're doing with our bodies when we do these activities. So enough talking about that. I want to get started with some movement, but keep in mind those principles as we go along. I'm going to talk about how you want to do these exercises. How you do these exercises is much more important than which version of an exercise you do, and that's why we're starting with these basics, because when we get these basics down pat, then we create those neural pathways, and we continue to use those neural pathways then when we go to the more complex exercises or through our daily activities, we're going to get much more benefit from these exercises. And actually, I might even go so far to say that if we do these exercises improperly, you may even be causing some harm, and you're actually reinforcing those bad patterns. So we want to really focus on breathing. When we're breathing, we really want to focus on engaging those transverse abdominis when we start to get those muscles engaged. So, as I mentioned, we're going to start with some very simple stuff. I'm settling in here on the mat, and I'm letting my body sink into the mat, letting the back of my head get heavy, letting the shoulder blades and the hips get heavy, letting those feet make a connection with the earth here. And as we start to pay attention to your breathing, it's probably good to just start from a place of noticing. Noticing where you can feel the inhalations, noticing where you can feel the exhalations. And as we start to get aware, then we can start to maybe do a little gentle direction. And directing that breath, that inhale, I'm going to start to really think about these sides of my ribs and the backs of my ribs, even where they connect with the mat. And really letting those spaces between the bones, between the ribs, open up and filling up with that new breath. And when I exhale, I'm going to use that as an opportunity to start to wake up those transverse abdominis muscles and really the abdominals in general. But in particular, today I'm focusing on that deepest layer of abdominal muscles. And we know those are engaged not only when that belly button sinks in toward the spine, but when the belly kind of knits together rather than popping up or splaying out or splaying apart. So on the inhales, breathing into the sides and backs of the ribs so I get a nice full breath. And exhaling, using that exhale to help me find those deeper core muscles. I'm not clenching, I'm just engaging. Now we're going to start to play with a little bit of positioning in the low back and in the pelvis. So I'm going to think about my belly here like a clock, my abdomen like a clock. And 6 o'clock way down here by my pubic bone, 12 o'clock way up here by my breastbone. And as I exhale, I'm going to draw that 12 o'clock position toward the floor. And you might even see that my tailbone is coming up a little bit here. Yours might, it might not. I don't want you to use your low back to do this, however. Use those upper abdominals. Now I'm inhaling. I'm going to try and engage those low muscles way down there by 6 o'clock. And my back is even arching up a little bit. Again, I don't want to use those back muscles. I want to really work this from those abdominals, that 12 o'clock space sinking toward the mat. And you may not be moving at all. You may just be starting to wake up some muscles here. And when I inhale, finding 6 o'clock, does one of those contractions feel stronger or weaker than the other? For most people, I think they're going to find in the beginning that 12 o'clock is easier to find and make work than 6 o'clock is. So again, you might just be spending some time working on waking up those 6 o'clock muscles. Let's do that one more time. So at the end of the day, when we come back, or at the end of this movement at least, when we come back to our Pilates breath, we're using that all along here, but really now breathing into the sides and backs of the ribs, exhale, just engaging. Now that whole clock face, but really waking up those deep abdominal muscles. And what you should find is hopefully we're somewhere in between those extremes of drawing in just that 12 o'clock or just that 6 o'clock. There's probably a little bit of space in your low back, and that's okay. We want that. But we don't want that to increase, and we don't want to be completely flat on the mat. What you may hear me say sometimes is flatten the belly. Flatten the belly is going to keep you in this more natural position. Just a little bit of breathing room maybe in that low back. And from here, we're going to start moving. So the idea is, as I start moving my leg, I'm going to do a heel slide here, sliding that heel out. And that's my exhale, and coming back home. Feel free to play a little bit with where you inhale and you exhale here. Remember, we want to focus on our breathing, which means that we also want to coordinate our movement and our breath. But you may find that you are using a little bit different breathing. Even in Pilates, even the kind of official, quote-unquote official breathing often will change. We start with something a little simpler where anytime you're doing some work, we're having an exhale. And then down the road, as you get better at that, often we'll try to teach you to inhale as you lengthen, particularly on lengthening movements, and exhale when we're on more compressive movements. But for right now, I'm inhaling as I come home. We're going to call this home position, and exhaling as I slide. I've got my hands right on those hip bones. You're welcome to do that too. Notice how those hips stay nice and steady. They're not rocking back and forth. I'm not shortening or lengthening in the sides of my body right now. We're going to keep that principle in mind as we progress a little bit here and move to our next movement. This is a knee fold. As I exhale, I'm going to center. Remember that centering principle, as if right from my center, I'm doing this knee lift, bringing that up, again, without moving that spine, without moving the hip, the pelvis, and exhaling as I lift, and inhaling as I come back down. So a couple things can sometimes go wrong here. One of those is if you're real tight, if you're real over enthusiastic, you might find that you start lifting your tailbone off of the mat as you bring that knee toward the chest. We don't want to do that. Again, we want to maintain that natural position of that low back and of those hips. Exhale, inhale. Let's do that one more time on each side, and then we're going to progress. Now, you might stick with this. If this is taking some real concentration and you feel like you're not 100% successful at this yet, feel free to stay with that. I'm going to go ahead and progress to the next level here, which is bringing one leg up to what we call tabletop. That shin is parallel with the floor. Now, I'm going to really make sure I'm drawing those abs in together as I bring that second leg up. You may find that your belly pops out when you do that. That's okay. That doesn't mean you can't do this. But when you get to tabletop, let's get that belly back in. We're going to exhale, bring a foot toward the floor, and inhale back up to tabletop. Exhale, bring a foot toward the floor. Inhale back up to tabletop. I'm going to bring those arms down to my sides now here. You're welcome to keep the hands on the belly, especially if you feel like that belly might be popping out. Check in. Make sure you're drawing, knitting those abs together. And exhale, and you can hear this gets a little more effortful for me. I'm going to make that even a little more effortful here as I go to a double. Bringing both feet toward the floor. Notice I didn't go all the way. So only go as far as you can continue to flatten the belly. If going further causes you to arch your back, that's not doing what we want it to. 2 more of those. One more. And then coming up, I'm just going to hug both knees in toward the chest here for a moment. Take a little stretch. While I'm here on my back, I'm going to do a little bridge as well. Now, we're starting to get into some spinal movement with this. So, there's a couple ways this can be done. One is to articulate, and what I mean by that is I'm coming up one bone at a time with my spine, my pelvis and my spine, off of the mat, and then coming back down one bone at a time. For those of you with just some general low back tightness, this is often a really nice way to lengthen those spinal erectors, those muscles that move up and down along the back of your spine. For if you have something like scoliosis, you may have been told to keep that back neutral. This isn't a huge motion. You're going to use your judgment here, but some of you, especially with something like scoliosis, you may find that you're much better off kind of keeping that low back in a more neutral position as you bring those hips up off of the floor and as you come back down. In either case, make sure you're not hunching your shoulders up, or pulling your shoulders up toward your ears, or pushing them up into the floor. Let those shoulder blades be nice and heavy on the floor. Again, those arms can be at your sides. That can be a nice way to make sure that your shoulder blades are away from your ears. Or you can have your hands on your belly, again, to make sure that those abs are engaged. I'm going to do this one more time. And then coming back down. So I talked about shoulders a little bit. I want to talk a little bit more about that. I'm going to bring those arms up toward the ceiling. Now, oftentimes when we go to lift those arms, you'll find that those shoulder blades come right off of the mat. Generally, we don't want to do that with our Pilates movements. Right now, I am going to do that because I want to kind of exaggerate this, what we call protraction of the shoulder blades. And then I'm going to retract those shoulder blades and let them flatten out on the mat, just so I can really feel what that feels like. Notice I'm not letting that belly pop up as I do that either. Reaching and returning. Also notice that I'm not hunching those shoulders up toward the ears as I do either one of those things. Protracting and retracting. Let's just do that one more time. Feel free to play with that. If this is new to you, you might want to spend a little bit of time. You might want to hit pause on your video here and play with that a little while. I'm going to bring those arms down to the side. So the other way those shoulders will move around, those shoulder blades will move around, is elevating, that's up toward the ears, that's that shrug sort of movement, and depressing. Generally, we want to focus on depressing those shoulder blades so that we can really get those shoulder blade stabilizer muscles engaged. Remember I mentioned that I was kind of a shoulder hiker, so I have to really think sometimes about getting those shoulder depressors engaged. And reaching. So as a general rule, I'm going to go into one of our basic movements now. I'm going to do some arm circles, just coming up toward the ceiling, right up over the chest. Arms come out to the sides, and hands come in toward the hips. In this range, your shoulder blades should not have to move around. So if you find that you're lifting those blades off of the mat and coming up toward the ears, again, this is an unstable movement. So I want to really set those shoulder blades down the back, really keeping the shoulder blades flat on the floor as I move through these circles. And so even this gives me an opportunity to lightly engage those shoulder blade stabilizers, to engage those abdominal muscles. I'm going to reverse the direction here. Notice I'm moving fairly slowly. As you get good at this, you can move faster. But again, we want to flow. We want to be in control with your movements. We want to be precise about those movements. One more time. Now, as we get into larger movements, those shoulder blades will start to move some. I do want to keep them flat here for these arm arcs. I'm going to also rotate my arms so my thumbs toward the floor as I come up and over. But when I get way up here in this upper range, those shoulder blades are going to move up toward my ears a bit. I don't want to hunch my shoulders, but I'm going to let them move a little bit. Coming back down toward the hips, however, I can almost immediately start drawing those shoulder blades down my back again. I'm going to turn those thumbs toward the floor here again, working to keep those shoulder blades flat. Up and over. And then the hands toward the hips. I'm just going to do that one more time here. Again, feel free to do extra, especially on this next one, this ab prep. May not be for all of you. Again, we're going to do a spinal flexion here. It's not a big one again, but it is a bit of a spinal flexion. So if you shouldn't be moving your spine, again, if you for those of you with scoliosis, or if you've got some thoracic spine issues, this may not be your exercise here. But we're just going to do a few of these ab preps, and the idea is I want to keep those collarbones open. I'm going to tuck my chin, lengthen the back of my neck, and I'm going to peel up off of that mat, one bone at a time. One of the reasons I wanted to cover this today, it's a really nice way to get into those upper abdominals. Tips of the shoulder blades are touching the floor. I come back down, bone space, bone space, bone space through that spine. The other reason I wanted to cover it is because a lot of our Pilates exercises will build on this movement, and we're going to give you a choice to either be in this, what we call ab prep position, or to keep your head down. And so when we're in that ab prep position, we want to make sure we're doing that the right way. We're knitting those abs together. We're staying open in those collarbones. There's no strain in the back of the neck here. That work should be in those upper abdominals. Again, maybe in those shoulder stabilizer muscles, shoulder blade stabilizer muscles. I'm just going to do this one more time here. And then coming back down. Now, rolling over onto my belly. We're going to start in this prone position. Keep in mind, to find that neutral, that natural curve to that low back, I actually need to lift my abs away from the floor here. And again, kind of knit together. I'm going to get in this nice, long, lengthened, straight position for starters. So our first exercise is going to be here, because this is the place that most of us can probably do. But this should be some work even to get here. Again, you want to get those abs engaged, get long. It's all about lengthening. I'm going to just hover those arms up over the floor. I'm in a T position here. If you find that you're hunching your shoulders, you can bring those hands more toward the hips. I'm going to rotate those thumbs toward the ceiling to externally rotate the arm. And I'm just going to do a simple lift and lower. Now, I'm going to call this the T for a lift and lower. This can also be done as an I. That's going to be a little easier. Keep going here with whichever one you're doing. Or a Y really gives me a nice opportunity to lengthen. But again, I don't want to feel a lot of strain in the back of the neck. I want to be able to keep those shoulder blade stabilizer muscles engaged. Lifting and lowering. I'm going to do this about 5 more times. 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, I'm going to come up to hands and knees, using those abs to help me come up away from the floor. Think about those transitions as well. We want to follow our Pilates principles there. Ear, shoulder, hip, all in a line here, just like a table. Make sure your belly's not dropping toward the floor. Keep those abs lifted into that spine. I'm going to reach one arm in the opposite leg. Again, opportunity to lengthen that spine here. Open up those spaces between the bones of your spine. Changing sides here. Just a little pause, and then coming back down. Reach, and just a little pause, and then come back down. Reach. Keep that back of the neck nice and long. You don't want to be cranking that neck. Shoulder blades are away from ears. Shoulder blades are nice and flat. I'm going to do that one more time on each side. Now, talking through the next one here, because I want to get right to the transition. We're going to get prone again. And some of you, it's maybe not a good idea to be extending that spine. If that's the case for you, you can go back to this I, T, or Y exercise. For the rest of us, we're going to start with those arms at the sides. This is I call this a marble roll. It's as if there's a marble here underneath my nose. I'm rolling that over toward the wall in front of me and lifting at the top of the breastbone. I'm still engaged in those abs. I'm still lifting, still lengthening, and coming back down. That's our simple version. That's our marble roll. Some of you may want to take this to the next step and even add your hands here, keeping those shoulders away from the ears and extending up into a swan. Nice long neck here, swan. Think about that swan's neck. This is not a swan's neck, right? Shoulders away from ears. 2 more. And last one. Now from there, I'm going to press back into a shell stretch or a child's pose here. Now, some of you with knee issues, this is a lot of pressure on those knees. So you may instead want to roll onto your back and draw your knees in towards your chest again. This is just a way to get a similar stretch and not put that same level of pressure on those knees. Now from here, we're going to roll onto the side. Now on my side, I'm going to lift through the waist. So if you look at my zipper line here, what we want to see here is a nice, perfect horizontal line. If I drop my waist into the mat, that's a different thing. And I'm not using those obliques. I want to get those obliques engaged for this. I'm going to put my hand right on my hip here because I'm feeling pretty stable today. You can always put your hand here for some help. This is going to help me align that hip. I want those hips perfectly stacked as I move into my basic forward and back motion. My belly knitting together so that I'm not arching my back and I'm not moving my spine as I bring that leg forward and as I bring that leg back. Forward and back. I'm going to do 3 more of those. 3, 2, we're going to do a real basic series with this today. Last one. So I'm going to keep that foot flexed. I'm reaching out through that heel. I'm going to do a little lift, and I'm going to do a little lower. Today we're just going to keep it real basic with that foot. Reaching out. I'm thinking specifically of that front edge of my heel bone right now as I reach out. I want to lengthen, get longer. Notice I'm not swinging that leg way up in the air. That's really conducive to dropping that waist right into the floor. Lift and lower. 3, 2, I'm feeling this in my glutes here, my glute medius, glute minimus, out the outside. If you bring that leg even a little bit forward, you're going to start using those hip flexors instead. I want you to use those glutes. So I'm going to come up. I'm going to keep reaching out through that heel. Right now I'm going to keep that foot flexed as I go into the circles. Now, notice my knee. My knee and my toes are pointed straight ahead right now. That's going to really help me facilitate using those glutes if I'm not turning that leg out. 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to reverse that circle. Well, I had to check in with that waist. It's really easy to end up dropping that waist into the mat. Keep that lifted. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. And we're going to turn the other way. So you can either roll over to your other side or you can turn the other way. Don't do both of those things. You'll be on the same side. So, reaching out through that leg. Abs are engaged, obliques are engaged. Notice you can see space underneath me here. We're looking for that horizontal zipper line here. Forward and back. Forward and back. You can even play a little bit with some flex and some point and flex here if you'd like. Or flex and point. But when we go to our lift and lower, today I want to keep that foot flexed. 3, 2, last one. Flexing that foot. I'm going to lift, reaching out toward that far wall as I lift. Help me keep that waist lifted. Help me lengthen that spine. It's almost as if I were in traction here. If you can imagine it. At the crown of the head, we're going to attach a bungee cord and attach it to the wall here, so it's trying to pull me that way. And same thing at the bottom of my foot. I'm attached to the wall over here. I'm trying to be pulled that way. So going into a circle, almost like I'm trying to drill a hole in that wall over there. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's my leg moving, not my torso. Keeping that torso quiet is the name of the game here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And nice little burn in those glutes there. More. I want to add the ab series in here before we're all done. So flat on my back. So I'm going to show you before we even get started on this one. You can always use this mat as a head hammock. Most of you who've worked with me before have done this exercise where we do this sort of head hammock thing where we let that head stay in the hammock, and you're always welcome to do something like the ab series, which we're about to do, this way as well. I'm going to do this from my ab prep position. You may do this with your head down. You may do this as a combination. If I start to feel some strain in the back of the neck, you might see me bring my head down for a moment, and then when I've kind of got things figured out and resituated, come back up into that ab prep. But our ab series, first one in the series, I'm going to peel up into my ab prep. I'm going to grab one leg here. I'm going to extend the other leg. And the first one in the series is our single leg stretch, we call it. Switch and switch, keeping that belly flat, pelvis is quiet. And again, in the name of keeping things simple, we're just going to do a short series of each. 2 more here. Last one. Then I'm going to my double leg stretch. I have to work to keep that tailbone down when I get to this double. Reach and return. Reach and return. And again, you can play a little bit with where the inhale and the exhale are. Coordinate that breath and movement though. One more. Next one. Single straight leg. Switch and switch, switch and switch. Remember that precision. Remember that control. Remember that breathing. Remember that flow. I'm going to flow right into the next one here. This will be our double straight leg. I like to do this with my fingertips at my shoulders. Hands behind the head, as long as you're not pulling forward, is an okay position as well. Out and up. 4, 3, 2, 1. And hugging those knees in briefly. Do some stirring of those hips. Now, I'd like to finish today with a Pilates push-up. This is a little different than just a normal push-up. I'm going to roll to my side to come up, and I'm going to do this from standing, but just know you can do something as simple as an elbow plank for this. Elbow plank could be even on your knees. You could be up on your toes. You could do a full plank and hold that position. What I'm going to do is a little bit more of a movement, a full movement. So, but we're just going to do 3 sets of 3 here. This is a lot of flexion. So again, those of you who maybe shouldn't be flexing that spine, you can modify this by coming down with a nice flat back and bending those knees a bunch for your transition. Or again, you might just stay in like a plank or an elbow plank sort of position. But I'm going to start by raising those arms up. I'm going to dive. So I want to peel, imagining a wall behind me here, and I'm going to peel off of that wall one bone at a time with that spine as I head toward the floor. When those hands get to the mat, I'm going to walk 2, 3 with those hands. I'm going to do about a half of a push-up here. So I can really keep those shoulder blades attached to my back, really keep those shoulder blades away from my ears. 3 push-ups, scooping those abs to walk, 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 and stack, stack, stack. Doing it again, diving over, Eventually we want to work into a rhythm with this. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And the last round here. Shoulder blades away from ears. And we are done for the day.